Canada is built on the ancestral land of Indigenous peoples. But regrettably, it's also a country that came into being without the meaningful participation of those who were there first. And even where treaties had been formed to provide a foundation for proper relations, they have not been fully honored or implemented. For First Nations, Métis Nation, and Inuit peoples in Canada, those early colonial relationships were not about strength through diversity or a celebration of differences. For Indigenous peoples in Canada, the experience was mostly one of humiliation, neglect, and abuse. Ils ont été victimes d'un gouvernement qui ne respectait ni leurs traditions, ni leurs atouts, ni leur gouvernance, ni leurs lois.
We are listening to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau addressing the United Nations General Assembly live. We continue with our coverage here on CJE 800.
Ils ont été victimes d'un gouvernement qui a cherché à réécrire leur histoire distincte, à éradiquer leur langue et leur culture en imposant plutôt des traditions et des modes de vie coloniaux. Ils ont été victimes d'un gouvernement qui a rejeté la protection du territoire et des eaux préconisée par les Autochtones, le principe de penser toujours aux 7 prochaines générations. Au fond, nous avons rejeté l'idée même que des générations entières d'Autochtones puissent se définir et vivre dans la dignité et la fierté qui leur est due. Et nous avons privé le Canada des contributions significatives que ces générations auraient offert pour faire avancer ensemble notre grand pays. L'incapacité des gouvernements canadiens successifs à respecter les droits des Autochtones au Canada nous fait grandement honte. Et pour beaucoup trop d'Autochtones, ce non-respect des droits persiste encore aujourd'hui. There are today children living on reserve in Canada who cannot safely drink, bathe in, or even play in the water that comes out of their taps. There are Indigenous parents in Canada who say goodnight to their children and have to cross their fingers in the hopes that their kids won't run away or take their own lives in the night. Young Indigenous people in Canada struggle to get a good education, and though residential schools are thankfully a thing of the past, too many Indigenous youth are still sent far away, far from their families, just to get the basic education most Canadians take for granted. And far too many Indigenous women live in Canada a life that includes threats of violence so frequent and severe that Amnesty International has called it a human rights crisis. That is the legacy of colonialism in Canada, of a paternalistic Indian Act, of the forced relocation of Inuit and First Nations communities, and a systematic denial of Métis rights and history, of residential schools that separated children as young as 5 years old from their families, punished them for speaking their own language, and sought to extinguish Indigenous cultures entirely. The good news is the Canadians get it. They see the inequities, and they're fed up with the excuses. And that impatience gives us a rare and precious opportunity to act. We now have before us an opportunity to deliver true, meaningful, and lasting reconciliation between Canada and First Nations, the Métis Nation, and Inuit peoples. Au moment où nous entreprenons de nous réconcilier, nous nous servirons pour nous guider des normes de base adoptées dans cette salle il y a 10 ans ce mois-ci. Je sais que par le passé, l'attitude du Canada à l'égard de la Déclaration des Nations Unies sur les droits des peuples autochtones a été décevante. On a activement fait campagne et voté contre, pour ensuite l'accepter sans grand enthousiasme, en disant qu'il s'agissait d'un document d'aspiration.
You are listening to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau addressing the United Nations General Assembly. We are carrying this live right here on CJAD 800.
Et ceux qui ont travaillé si fort pendant si longtemps pour faire de ce document une réalité. In the words of Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the Declaration provides the necessary principles, norms, and standards for reconciliation to flourish in 21st century Canada. That's not an aspiration. That's a way forward. Last year, at the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, Canada's then Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs finally corrected Canada's position on the Declaration and announced that we are now, without qualification, a full supporter of the Declaration. In partnership with Indigenous peoples, we're moving ahead with a thorough review of federal laws, policies, and operational practices to get our house in order, to make sure that our government is meeting its obligations, including international obligations under the Declaration. We know that the world expects Canada to strictly adhere to international human rights standards, including the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and that's what we expect of ourselves, too. We are working closely with Indigenous peoples in Canada to better respond to their priorities, to better understand how they see and define self-determination, and to support their work of nation rebuilding. Along with Indigenous partners, we are co-developing programs to ensure the preservation, protection, and revitalization of Métis, Inuit, and First Nations languages. In short, we've been working hard in partnership with other orders of government and with Indigenous leaders in Canada to correct past injustices and to bring about a better quality of life for Indigenous peoples in Canada. I'll give you a few examples. Many will sound familiar to you because they are closely aligned with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, goals that apply to all of our countries without exception. Our efforts include investments to help bring safe and clean drinking water to all Indigenous communities, part of the UN's Sustainable Development Goal number 6, clean water and sanitation. So far, more than 24 long-term drinking water advisories in Indigenous communities have been eliminated, and we have a plan to bring to an end those that remain. Ces efforts prennent la forme de nouveaux investissements afin d'éliminer les écarts en matière d'éducation dans les communautés des Premières Nations. Ces nouveaux accords reconnaissent le pouvoir et l'autorité.
You're listening to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's address to the United Nations General Assembly. He is telling the story of Canada's Indigenous peoples, the challenges that they've faced over hundreds of years, and also how the government is working to rectify those issues. We continue now with our live coverage here on CJAD 800.
Durable numéro 4, éducation de qualité. Pour beaucoup d'Autochtones au Canada, ces investissements permettront, entre autres, de préparer le terrain en vue d'atteindre l'objectif de développement durable numéro 8, travail décent et croissance économique. Nous savons que personne ne peut espérer avoir une chance réelle et égale de réussir sans les éléments suivants: une bonne santé, une communauté solide, un bon emploi bien rémunéré, une éducation de qualité et un endroit où vivre qui soit sécuritaire et abordable. Bien entendu, cela s'applique aux peuples autochtones. That's why our efforts include working with Indigenous communities to help build and refurbish homes. Construction work on nearly 4,000 homes has been completed or is underway, helping to fulfill SDG number 11, making communities safe and sustainable places to live. And across the country, we're also working on a national housing strategy to give more Canadians access to housing that is safe, affordable, and adequate. Our efforts also include a stronger focus in Indigenous communities across Canada and around the world on SDG number 5, combating gender-based violence and giving women and girls equal opportunities to succeed.